I'm Mark Andre. I'm the Ed Automation Nerd here at Enable. My role consists of helping partners just like you guys with really anything I can with regard to efficiency, automation, scripting, things like that. So really, what we're going to do today is just one more example of that. We're going to show you how you can leverage your APIs within RMM and do a variety of cool things. I'll try to baby step through it. I know some of it might be a little daunting, so we'll go through it. If you don't follow me on social, you have them on the screen. That will be the best place if you want to keep up with what I'm working on and what's happening out there for automation. So always a good idea to do so. All right, with that, I have a couple of quick polls. I do like to get to know the audience at the beginning. So what I'm going to do is launch the first one. There we go. We have a really small group of people right now, so please make sure you vote just so I know what you guys want out of this. And that's going to help us a little bit. So I'll give you a few seconds to vote. There you go, started. Half of you want to learn how to use third-party APIs. 25% want to use the Enable RMM API, sorry. And 25% want to learn what an API is. All right, so what we're going to do is next talk about why should we go through this course? Well, not me, but you guys. This is a pretty niche course, so that's why the audience is always a little lower on courses like this, but I find them important. Most people typically will have very limited exposures to APIs in general. They also are complex. I see people using APIs all the time and they scratch their head, they come to me, they have issues. Whether it's our APIs or anybody else's, it's always very complex. Also, there's different types of API that exist out there. So do keep that in mind as they will work differently, whether it's REST, SOAP, and different implementations of each of those. Also, you actually may want to connect to the Enable RMM APIs, so that course will be good to show you how you can do so. This course is really geared towards the basics of using APIs and what we recommend and why. The agenda, super straightforward. We'll go through the prereq. That's always very important. What do you need to use those? What the APIs can do, right? What API functions are there and things like that. We'll talk about securely authenticating with it using the API key, obviously. We'll also show how to use the Enable RMM APIs with soapUI and different PowerShell examples, and we'll finish with using Enable RMM and Automation Manager to connect with third party. As far as the checklist, you don't need too much. You need access to your RMM, duh. You do need access to a test device, ideally, if you want to run commands against. Not mandatory. We're not going to do anything intrusive today. It's only getting data points, so that's not a big deal. You should have access to PowerShell, ISC, or VS Code. We'll show you how to install that in the first lab. Don't worry about it if you don't use it very much. You should ideally either have a basic understanding of PowerShell or having gone through the PowerShell bootcamp that we did last week. The reason I say that is that the course doesn't focus on the syntax of PowerShell. We focus more on doing the calls. So I'm hoping you guys have a little bit of a basic understanding so you can leverage the course and be more efficient. So just keep that in mind. And you should have the lab manual for this course. Now that I put the right one, once again, I'm sorry. It does happen, and that's my bad. It's been a very long 2 days. So what we're going to do is start with a very basic demo on using the online help to use the APIs and using the APIs to export data to Excel. And this is surprisingly a lot easier than people may think. So what I'm going to do is quickly go to log in here. I'm going to need to get my 2FA key. Where is it? There we go. And okay, we're going to log in here. And now that we're in, oh, by the way, I'm also daily driving Windows 11 now, so if you see any weird quirks, that's what I'm going to blame this on, so just be aware. Don't expect anything, but just in case. And I'm going to knock on wood as I say that. So what I'm going to refer to is, first of all, is the online help. This is your best friend for everything API. It's actually really well built. So when you go in the online help, you go to PSA and API. There is the data extraction API. That's what you're looking for. This lists all the different API calls you can do. I'll show you a list in the PowerPoint soon, but this is everything that you can do here. There's actually quite a few things. One thing, do not make calls all the time, like completely constantly, because there you might get throttled and blocked because there's an impact on the back end and some people are just abusing it like crazy, so we have to block that. Now, what I was talking about earlier is you do have the ability to import the data as an Excel data. It's all super well documented here. There's screenshots and everything. Just use a developer, import the XML data, blah, blah, blah. Super easy. And this allows you to dump data directly from RMM into Excel. So if you want to get device count, device data, active issues, to do reviews, all kinds of stuff like that, you can do that incredibly easily, very rapidly, just by following this little thing. So if you go into the online help where I went, go to the API, data extraction, and importing into a spreadsheet, this walks you through all of the steps you need. It's insanely easy. It is incredibly powerful. This shows 2010, but the process has not changed very much. Excel is more or less the same on that front, so no big deal there. So definitely, if you're not familiar with that, please get familiar. This is awesome. So that is the first thing. The second thing is to use any of the APIs when you're in the help, you do need to, basically you do a call directly to the function you want. So let's say we want to say list clients. It actually shows you what the URL generation looks like. So it's HTTPS, your server /API / API key, your API token. Then the service you want to hit is list client. And then you could do any parameters. For list clients, you typically don't need it. So all you would do is this. Then you would put in your API token and whatever your address is. Now, the address, we had some issues this morning. It's basically what your HTTPS address here is. I'll show you the list soon. Just don't, some of them will have dashboard dot something for some reason. Don't use that, just use www, or it'll be in the URL in the PowerPoint, so make sure you use those. So those are the things you need to know. Use the proper URL, use the thing that you see here, the URL generation like that. And finally, you go to settings, general settings, and here you will see API. If you don't have access to that, obviously you can't do the labs, but you can still keep up with the course, but just something to keep in mind. So if I go here, I see my API key, I can regenerate it, it will make me a new one, and I can then use that. So it's super easy, I can just flip it and make new ones. Just be careful, if you make a new one, the old one no longer works. This is something to keep in mind if you plan on keeping track of that and reusing it for production things. Or if you're already using this for production and you click generate a new one, everything that's using it will just die. So please be very careful. All right, cool. So now we're at the point where we've looked at these things. What are some of the very common things people will do with our APIs? First of all, they'll export device info. So like I said, go into Excel, dump all the devices, super easy. You can get the site install package downloaded through a script, and then the agent installed. So basically automate the whole install process through a script, which is cool. You can create customers and sites, which is useful if you have a third-party API, a third-party PSA that you want to automatically generate stuff on our side. You're welcome to do that. You can export failed checks so that you can do a review periodically, which is cool. You can export your patch management info to do reports and data manipulation. And you can also run tasks or run scripts right from automation, from the APIs. So those are some of the common ones. To be honest, the list is quite long, but we'll see that in a few minutes. To access the APIs, I just showed you that you need to go get your API token. Once again, it is global to all users, not to you. So please be very careful. These are the URLs I was talking about. Some of them will have, when they log in, they'll have dashboard.systemmonitor.us instead of the www. So if that is your case, make sure you replace that with www. Otherwise, you will get a what's it called? It's going to be an authentication error or a access denied error. That's what we saw this morning. So make sure you use them like this. If you guys want it, I can put that list in the chat later if you guys are having issues, but just to keep that in mind. Now that we said that, what can we really do with this? Honestly, that's the list. It's a very, very long list. You can do stuff. Should I use my little pointer thing? There we go. You can do things like list clients, servers, workstation, sites. You can list devices at a client. You can add clients, like I said earlier, listing the checks for a device or devices. You can look at getting antivirus data, look at listing hardware and software information. There's all kinds of stuff you can do to dump out through the APIs. There's a lot of stuff. And this list is very long. You're not going to use 90% of this. Realistically, that is the list that you can expect to take a look at from time to time. These lists are in your lab manual. So don't try to, write it down frantically and quickly or take a screenshot. Don't worry about it. It's in your lab manual. I made sure to include it there. It makes it easier. So this lab manual will have these tables. So you can see the list of clients and this like that. You can see that all these calls are there. Now, to use any of them, I heavily recommend you go back to the online help. Because let's say I say, you know what? I want to see how to list software for a device. Okay, how do I do that? Go to the online help, and then software, listing software, click, and then it tells me to use this. You go to this, and then list software, and then you need the asset ID or the device ID. Okay, cool. And then this is what it's going to look like when it reports. It's going to report back with every software on the machine. Okay, cool. That's nice to know. And now you know how to use it, right? So it's just basically leveraging the help to use any of those calls as you use it more and more. So now we've already done the API key, but I do want to touch on a couple of things on the prereq side, because to me, that's very important. So if I go back here, the first prerequisite I'm going to say is Visual Studio Code. So if you go to code.visualstudio.com, you can download that. Now, as far as using this, obviously this is not a PowerShell or a scripting course, but once you download, you install, you do next. What you need to do is you need to go to File right here, Preferences, Extensions, and you're gonna look for PowerShell by searching, like that, PowerShell. In my case, it's already installed, so that's fine. You would install that, you just say yes. The lab manual will cover all of that, so don't try to do it at the same time. You won't keep up, but it's all in your lab manual. You'll be able to do that. So once you've done that and you've installed that one, the next one, soapUI, is the next thing that we want to talk about. soapUI is a product that is made by SmartBear. It used to be soapUI. There was a pro and a free version. Now they changed it into Ready API, which is their new product, but they are giving away soapUI itself, the old product, as a open source download now. So they're completely free to use, which is amazing. So you're welcome to go and grab it. I put the link into the chat. It's also in your lab manual. So you can go in here and grab a copy of it, install it. And when you install it, I'm opening it real quick. I'm going to show you. Once you open it, you will get this is more for prototyping and testing specific API calls. I love that product. I've used it for a long time for anything from basic to complex stuff. You can make SOAP project, REST project, you copy paste your URL, then you can test what's going to happen. It's super cool. So we're going to be leveraging that as well in the course today. So these are the most of your prerequisites. I do heavily recommend you have Notepad++ as well. Absolutely not mandatory, but I love using Notepad++ for a variety of things, one of which is that they have a plugin called XML Tools. So if you already have Notepad++, but you don't have that, you just go to Plugins Admin, and you search for XML Tools. Under Available, you install it, it's free. And what it does is that it gives you the ability to format, print a XML. You'll see that when we get to that. I absolutely love using that. So that is why I always recommend it. I think it's definitely worth it. What we're going to do now is go down a little bit, talking about why would you want to use PowerShell or any scripting or development really. So PowerShell allows you to access APIs, send data to enable RMM and vice versa very effectively. So you can write a script, give it to someone, and say when you have X issue or when you need X data, do something. You can give them a script and just have them run it. Now, it is arguably the simplest and most common scripting language out there. It is available on everything now, being Linux, Mac, and Windows. They have a lot of flexibility in what you can do with them. So definitely recommend you spend some time learning it if you're not familiar with it just yet. It's absolutely 100% worth it. Now, how do the API actually work? If you're going to connect through PowerShell, it's pretty straightforward. You're going to basically go here and set variable. So this is the variable, this is the value. And you're going to do that for the API key, your personal secure API key, and you're going to do that for your URL. Once again, that is important. Then you have two lines. One, when you set the URL, the full URL as you send the online help. This one is saying that the service is list clients. And then you run the command. Running the command is really just that piece here. and this here is the variable receiving that, and I'm forcing it to be XML to make sure that it parses it properly instead of sending it to a string, what it would typically do by default. Then, if you want to output it in a usable manner instead of the XML, this piece of code will deserialize the XML and will generate an array that you can then use to output to a table or do whatever you want to do. So this is going one step further. So definitely recommend, and we'll play with that, by the way, so you don't need to scratch your head and go like, what is that? We're going to go through all of that. One thing that's worth noting is that the output of the script of the API puts things in C data section. Is just a way of formatting the XML. You need to deserialize it with that piece of code here is important. If you don't do that, it's not going to work. When you try to put it into a string, it's going to return the C data, which is kind of weird. Now, what we're going to do is do our first, kind of dip our feet in the water and go with soapUI at first before we go down the rabbit hole too much. So what I'm going to do is find my, there it is. You can find my soapUI, and the first thing is going to be pretty straightforward. So I go here and I say file, new REST project, sorry. Then I'm going to say https://am.remote.management /API/ API key equals to my API, double quote API key, and service equals to list clients, let's say. I'm going to keep it simple. And okay, when I do that, it basically generated this, and all I got to do is now run. If I didn't make any mistakes, it will take 3-5 seconds, depending on the size of my environment, and it will return for me a list of clients. So give it a second. It's usually fairly quick. Oh, it's saying error response, blah, blah, blah. What did I do wrong? Oh, no double quotes. Okay, so maybe I did this wrong. Nope, I still did it wrong. So what did I do? Oh, I forgot www. Yeah, pretty sure that's what it is. So every little thing matters, and obviously I was doing this intentionally to show you something. Obviously. No, more seriously, everything matters. You can see here I was missing www. It's not the right address for the API. It's going to say no, screw you, and it gives you an error, right? Now in the raw, I would have seen the error, but now it's showing me the XML output. So it shows my result, my items, then the client / client / client, and so on, and everything is there. So in XML, everything's an attribute or an element, so it's basically grouping it for you. You can see here the name of the client is Charles, the client ID is this, and so on and so on and so on. The client ID is unique across the board, across all customers, across everyone on your server. So this is unique to you. This is your personal unique client ID. Those are important. You can see that's why the numbers don't line up. They're just whatever they were when I created one. So this is basically allowing me to get that data. If I want to do another example, I can say file, new REST project. I could modify this one, but just for the testing purposes, I'm just going to make a new one. Then I say this and list failing checks, and do OK and run. Oh, same type was earlier. Run. Yay, that works. The reason that I do that because it takes a few seconds, I know it's actually processing, which is good. That's because the API is getting the data I want. So there you go. And now this is a list of all my failed checks. Right now, you can see it's reporting the full output of it. Those are automation policies. So you can see the output being shown here. And this is a list of all of that. Now, this is a very long list. There's 5,000 lines of output, but this is all in XML format. So even though you can see here, this is kind of, multiple lines, this is not going to cause any issues because it's within the XML tag formatted output. So the system knows to group that together. Now, if you were to export that to Excel, Excel might freak out a tiny bit, but other than that, it'll be fine. So this is what I use mostly for prototyping. I'm not going to use that on a day-to-day for production use, but when I want to prototype the API call, I want to make sure that I got the query correct, because sometimes it won't work in PowerShell, and it's because there's a PowerShell error or an error in my code. I go here and I put the same query, and if the query works here, I know I have something in my code that's wrong. If it doesn't work here, I know my query is wrong, right? Whichever one of the two is wrong, I can then go and fix that. So this gives me that visibility pretty nicely. So that is something that I definitely recommend you get familiar with and use. And that is why I've put that in the labs. And in my opinion, that is absolutely 100% worth it. So what we're gonna do is I want to go back to soapUI. I'll do one more. So basically here I see, wait, not in this one, this one. I see my client ID is right here, 191.693. If I do one more, paste, and I fix my typo like that. I can also say list sites. And now if I want to introduce the concept of parameters a little more to see maybe I want to get a site list. Now you have to do a list sites. So to get that, what I'm going to do is go service equals this, and then if I'm not mistaken, I'm going to go hold on. I actually don't remember, so we're going to go in the online help because that's going to save us. Oh, why am I being frozen? All right, let's see what we're going to do here is one of two things. Either I can recover this or we're going to restart simply. I'm going to close a few things just in case it's making it kind of freak out too much. soapUI is Java-based, and just like any Java-based software, once in a while will be temperamental, and I think that was this time of the day. So we're going to give it a second. We're going to reload it. There we go. All right, I think we're good. So I'm going to do here, HTTPS am.remote.management/API/ quote API key equal to my API key, which is right here. Oops, like this, and was it service equal list sites and client ID equals well, I don't remember what it is, so list clients. So this is the real world of using APIs. No matter what you do, there's always going to be some weird little quirk. So what we're going to do here real quick is list 191.693. Okay, so new rest paste and list site client ID equal 191.693. So I'm saying give me all the sites for this customer and run. Now I have two sites, the big site and a small site, and this is showing me both. So this API call now dives deeper, but has 3 parameters versus this one that has 2. That's part of why it's kind of cool to use it through soapUI, that you see all these things, and I definitely like doing that. So if you use, okay, actually, really good question from Rob. He's saying that he's using systemmonitor.us, and I am using am.remote.management. Because there's different instances of RMM for different regions. You'll see that a lot with a lot of cloud platforms. They'll do like WW2, WW12, WW13, and so on. They'll have different instances. That is all it is. We basically regionalized the servers. I'm in Canada, so I guess they put me on this one. The US one typically will be systemmonitor.us. There's one for France, for Europe, and different countries with their data and their different geos. So that's really all it means. It's not a bad thing. You need to use the one that you're using to log in. What I always tell people is go into your dashboard and look at what you have here. The URL you have here is what you're going to want to use. Now make sure that you use from the list I gave you, but you'll be good to use that. So that's just something to keep in mind. So very good question. Thanks. Couple of questions from people. Everything was good, it seemed. Someone is referring to the fact that you can use invoke REST method instead of what's in the lab manual. You're entirely correct. There's literally 3 or 4 different ways I can think of to do those API calls. This is the way I picked, but you're welcome to use the one that you're familiar with. There's no one size fits all, and there's no single way of doing this. Right now we're using soapUI for prototyping, but we're next going to go into formatting the XML through PowerShell. So absolutely 100% you can do it the way that you're familiar with. I do like to do it this way personally, but you're welcome to do whatever you prefer for sure. So if I go into PowerShell, where's my notepad? There it is. Here's my PowerShell. So if I start from here and I make a new script and call it 2021-09-22 p.m. lab 3. Oh, darn it, I always do that. I call it .txt. I have to call it .ps1 so that it recognizes it as a PowerShell. You can see the icon changes to PowerShell right there. So I'm going to clean that out and start fresh. So now what I need to do in order to use this specific example is I need to put in the API key. Then what I need to do is simply put those 2 lines in. Those 2 lines in are going to basically call the API. Now, At that point, what I'm going to do is be able to just get it. So I'm going to copy paste my API key like that. In my case, it's going to be www.am.remote-management and run. There you go. Now the output is not what I would have expected. It is just basically outputting that it's an XML, which is fine. But if I do inner XML, this is going to output the actual XML content. So this one you can see is actually like a proper XML. Now, if I want to go one step further, I can just go out file dot c/temp/rmn output clients.txt, or XML actually would work fine. And then run this. This is going to output it to an XML file. So if I go into my Windows Explorer and I go to C temp, just like that, now I can see here that that output RMM out, what did I call it? RMM output clients right here. That is my file. So what I'm going to do is go in Notepad++ and open that up. RMM output clients. Now, this is a very, very long line where everything seems to be. That's what I was saying. That plugin comes in very handy. I go XML tools and I say pretty print with indentation and say save. Now that XML is saved forever. If I open that with Notepad after, just regular old Notepad, use another app. Where's Notepad? There it is. You can see it kept the formatting that I said it would be on one line. So this is just a little tool to make your life easier. Now you can see here, you're always going to have your XML intro at the top to show you the versioning. You just leave that alone. Then my result when it was created, the host was this, and then here's every client being exported out with their different data points saying that this is a client ID, this is the user if there is one, if there is not, the creation date of that customer, and then the number of servers, workstation, mobile, and total device. Now this one says 2, 8, and total is 10. That makes sense, and that shows that. So now I'm able to run the API call through PowerShell. This script all in is really just 4 lines, right? That's really all you need. At this point, you have your output, you connected to the API, and you got something. Now, the way I'm doing it is, first of all, I like to separate the input section from the execution section. That's just a meeting, but that's also a good practice. And then I format it into an output. So when I do inner XML on an XML variable, it gets whatever the XML content is instead of outputting that, oh yeah, I'm aware this is an XML, big whoop, deal with it. Now it's actually outputting the content. And then when I do pipe and out file, it outputs that variable into a file, which is what I try to do. Now, if I do want to format it properly into a table so I can reuse, I would use something like this. Now, this, what it does, I then generate an empty array. Once I've done that, I basically say, okay, go through this list of clients into the XML. And for each client in that list, you're going to generate an object in PowerShell, and you're going to loop through and then you're gonna loop through and get the name, the client ID, the server count, and workstation count, because that's the data point that I care about, but I could have gotten more. And when I do that and I run it, you can see here, I'm getting a proper array that I can then reuse. I can see how many there are, I can do different things. So this is now through PowerShell giving me the availability to go one step further and to get that data out the way I want. Now, if I want to do that for, let's say, sites like we did in soapUI, I'm going to take the exact same thing and just keep working with it. So I'm going to scroll down here and say API key. Now, the customer ID, I don't need close to that's true, it's number. So the customer ID in my case is 191.693. Server ID is www.am.remote.management. And now, same thing again. Basically create your URL, call the URL, then split it up so that it's pretty and run. So what it did is that it now shows, here's my list of customers, and for that customer, here's my list of sites. And you know what, if I want to go one step further, what I could also do is within that for each, I could say, you know, don't do the array output or anything. I just want to get all the sites for all the customers. So if I want to go a little crazy, what I can do, like that. Client ID is equal to, wait, what is it called? There, or assign client ID. Just because I don't want to have to recreate the wheel, we're going to be using the one that's there. So once I'm done freaking out doing that, I'll show you what I'm doing. It's going to be pretty cool. Like that, like that. All right. Yeah, client ID, site ID, client name. You know, why not add the client name? So, client ID equals to client ID, and then we're gonna add client name $sign underscore dot client name, like that. So if I run this now, didn't make any mistakes. Dun dun dun. Here it is. I can get my. Oh, that's not gonna work. You're right. This is gonna be. Where am I doing wrong? That will be. Okay, so. Yeah, that should do. And here, let's retry. Yeah, so basically, anyways, I'm making a typo, it doesn't matter. What I want to show here is I can then generate a big array where all my clients are here. You can see the IDs, then the site IDs are here, and then the site names are here. And I'm just missing the client name because I'm making a typo somewhere. But essentially what this gives you is this will just allow you to dump a list of everything that you're looking for. Oh, is the C data always? I always forget that C data thing. So here, like that. So if I redo this now, did I make a typo somewhere? Double quote and run. There you go. So you can see here, this is my client name, this is the site ID, client ID, site name, and so on. So now I'm able to get a list of all these things for that customer. So if I do this a little cleaner, there you go. This is the full output of that. So now through one API call, I'm taking that, I'm grouping this within the other one, and I'm just saying do both. In your lab, you're gonna do them separate for very obvious reasons. It's gonna be a lot simpler, but this is allowing you to go, to just keep diving in and doing more and more. There is one more thing in this lab, which is to get the here, and here. This one is going to get all the devices for a client, So the API and those two we already have. The client ID I want is 191.693, and we already have the server ID. What did I remove? Device type. Sorry, I forgot. Server. So show me all the servers for that client, and then here's all my servers. So similar to the other two, this little piece of code will now go and get all the servers for this client through this URL and output it into an XML. And by doing the exact same thing that we did before, just using the format to create the array like this, I can then output that as a proper table. And the idea is to keep building upon that. Those are just code samples to show you basic things that you can do and that you can definitely leverage. There's 100% more than one way to do this. This is the way that I personally prefer. For pick a reason, that's what I like to do. But there's definitely multiple ways to do this. So please make sure that if you prefer a different way, don't take what I say as gospel is the only way. Definitely use whatever you want. Now, before we go into this lab, someone asked me, how do I do the display notepad to show properly? You basically go to plugins, you go to plugins and min, you install the XML tools. Once you've installed it, you say Pretty Print or Pretty Print Indent, whichever one. And what it will do is that it's going to basically make this into multiple lines. So Rob, that is how you would split that. All right. This is the next thing we're going to do now. We've gotten different data points. Now I want to go with just something a little more concrete, something that I've actually had to do for other partners in the past. So hopefully this will help you guys as well. So if I go into here and I got kicked out, so we're going to log back in and and go back to my 2FA because security is awesome. 1990. All right, we're in. So now that I'm in, what I want to do is I want to use the download the agent and site install. Now you can just use the regular agent. You're welcome to do so, but personally, 9 times out of 10, I would always like to use a site install package instead. You don't need to log in, you don't need to configure anything. You just run this silently and you're done. If you have a new customer, a new employee that you want to onboard very rapidly, just say, here's a file, run this, thank you, and they show up. Nothing to do, nothing magical, just so much easier. So that's what I like. So what I'm gonna do is go download. Now, the manual steps is go to here, pick the customer you want, whichever one, pick whatever site you want, go next. Dead, whatever it done freaking out, it's gonna generate the ID. And now you can download the remote worker one. That is the one that I typically prefer. And that's the one that I just need. It just does the install and it's easy. And this one is designed slightly differently. The difference is in the online help. I'm not gonna go into that very much, but basically you open the zip file, you have your file, you're good to go. It's literally all you need. So I really recommend using that thing to make it easier on yourself. But now that you have that, if you want to do it programmatically, there's quite literally a super simple script you can do. Let me just go into my lab. And what you need to do first is you need to get your client ID and your site ID. That you do need to get through a script. So you would have to include the information in the script. But once you've done it, I'm going to just save that as PowerShell. So 21:09:22 p.m. lab 4.ps1. Okay. Basically, you can see here the color changes because it does recognize that it's PowerShell, which is much better. And done. So basically, what that's going to do for us is that this is going to allow us to go to the API and say, I need my site install package for this client, and it's going to create that installer and give it to me into the API through the download file here, and then it's going to unzip it. So I need to get my API key once again, because I'm going to save myself a little bit of time. I'm going to say this. No site, no client ID. The site ID that I want, I don't remember, so we're going to go here and say, okay, so client ID is here. So let's do a different one. So client ID, yeah, hold on, I'm missing something here. Yeah, I accidentally deleted that line. That's my bad. Like that. Okay, so client ID is going to be 41423, and the site ID is going to be 71135. The reason I notice is that here on this line here, it shows me one. I'm going to use that. When I go to run this now, what it's going to do is that it downloads the installer right here. It just did right now. And then it generates this file. It unzips it here. So obviously, these are all the parameters that are going to be generated into the URL here. And then you get your web client request, you download the file to the temp folder. Again, just make sure temp exists. And then finally expand it into, unzip it basically into the folder, and you're good to go. So this is giving me the opportunity to unzip and expand whatever I'm looking for very easily. Now, the one thing I'll mention, if you're gonna do this on some customer's machine through an existing RMM or things like that, now this is where you wanna be careful, right? Because you don't wanna put the API key in plain text in the script. That'd be a bad idea. So what I typically do in these cases is I would use parameters. Hold on, we don't need all this, just like that. And then mandatory equals true, because I do need this. Is that it? No, hold on, I'm doing this wrong. I do this every time, so I'm gonna go and grab that from a different course to save ourselves a little bit of time. So that's on my PowerShell bootcamp, but I use this all the time. PowerShell bootcamp input. There you go, parameter. So like that. So basically what I'm gonna say is mandatory, it's a string. And then I'm gonna say API key. Now I could do the site ID and client ID as well, or I could put the name and search for it. There's different ways that you can go about that really. Once again, this is not a PowerShell course. I'm not gonna go too deep down that rabbit hole, but you can definitely do it your own way very easily. So when I go to run this now, it actually asks me for the API key. I have to paste that in for oops. Okay, like that, and go. It's gonna redo it again. It's gonna download it, and boom. Now it is freaking out because it is already there. and I did not set it to overwrite. So basically you have to make sure it's not there. Delete the file, rerun, paste, okay. And now you're gonna see this time, boom, it doesn't freak out and it's recreating that file for me and re-unzipping it. And now that it's done, there we go, we have that new file. So basically now I am able to generate that information, expand that into a zip, but I'm doing it in a secure manner by putting parameters in place. So most RMMs, most different platforms, most scripting tools or automation tools that exist out there, including our own, allow you to do parameters, and that is what you would want to do. In your lab, I did not make you do it because I want to keep it simple, but I get this question every time I give a course in that kind of fashion. So from a security standpoint, you want to do that. Now, if you want to know how to do that, I'm going to copy paste that example in the chat. So you guys are welcome to grab it for sure. And then you can go and grab it. Now, if you've done the other labs, this will basically get you to the point where you do have your installer ready to use. I'm not gonna make you do that lab just because it's just a couple lines and it's fine. But what I want to do is I want to focus the time on the other two pieces, which for me are more important. So we're not gonna do a quick break. We're gonna start looking a little deeper into combining API. So using one API call to call another one and to create a little complex script. Now this is the script that I'm talking about. What I'm doing here is I'm saying, okay, get my list of all the clients. Now, when I get that, I then say for each client in my list, right, go through and get all the sites. For each site in that list for that client, go get all the workstations, then put that into a list. Once you're done, go get all the servers, put that into a list, and then output all the devices across all my customers. So what I'm allowing myself to do now is to output all these different data points, and this one is checking for devices that did not check in over 90 days. I could make that configurable. I could make it where I say I want to see 90, 30, 120, whatever. But this is just a matter of deciding what makes sense for you. So let's take a quick look at that before I make you guys go into that. Lab 2021, 09, 22, PM, lab 5.ps1. There you go. So first thing is, once again, your API key. So I'm going to grab that from a previous lab because we're going to be lazy a little bit. So there you go. After that, I will put my max age to 90 days. So I want to see devices that are over 90 days. Now in the lab manual, this is a pretty long stretch of text. I'm going to copy paste it in. There you go. And just like you saw in the PowerPoint, I'm getting today's date. I'm saying list all my clients. Then go through and say for each client, go through and get all the sites. For all the sites, go through and get all the workstation. For the workstation, now go and get the servers and make that into a list. So if I run this now, I don't really use output very much. There you go. Now it's outputting. This is all my workstations for all these, for this customer in this case. But this is allowing me to loop through and do whatever I'm looking to do and get all these data points. So this is giving me just more flexibility in how you want to use. But this is all devices that have not checked in over 90 days. You can see this one is 800 days, this one's 141, 365. Now, you could simply go in the UI and say, under settings, you can say, where do you go again? Shoot, I'm drawing a blank. That's not it. Shoot, I'm drawing a blank. There is the setting to know devices that did not check in, the cleanup. And I hate when that happens. I am completely drawing a blank. Other setting, other client. So I'm trying to remember where I can do the auto cleanup to show you. And I'm completely drawing a blank. I hate when that happens. I've been giving courses way too long in the last couple of days, and now I'm getting a little agent management. There it is. Phew, I found it. Now, what it basically says here is they automatically delete devices that have been not checked in for X amount of days. I find this very aggressive. Some people don't like to use this, which is why I'm saying the scripted way you do it is good. You can run here, run the script once a month, dump that to an Excel and see, okay, what is new, compare it. Okay, there's 5 new ones, let's go and act on it. Or maybe the customer says, no, I'm paying you for this, leave them there because they're in a box and at some point I might need them. Just say, fine, you know what, you're paying me for it, who cares? And leave them there. But if the customer doesn't pay you for them anymore and you're paying for the agent, well, obviously you're leaving money on the table so you can remove them. So that is just something to keep in mind. And that script gives you the ability to do that. What we're going to do next going to it in failed checks. Failed checks, again, it's another script that I have more or less pre-made. So we're likely not going to do it as a lab because it doesn't make any sense, but it's in your lab manual. And then what I wanted to do is include as many real life examples as you guys would have to do in life from time to time. So your lab manual contains all these code samples. So if I do save here, 09:22 p.m. lab 6.ps1, what I'm going to do is start as usual with my preamble. So where to go? Not this. No, that, there you go. So this, my server URL and API key. Then the rest of it is going to be just copy pasting that big chunk of blob of text that's in your lab manual, just like that, and there. So if I was to run this, now I do want to show it as well. So if I do run this, what this one does is that it goes through the failed checks for everybody. So all right, terrific. So basically this gives me a dump of all the active issues across all customers. In this case, that's a lot. And basically it says, okay, for each client, same as earlier, go to also site. For all the sites, go to this. For all of this, go to this, and keep adding and adding and looping through. And it keeps basically looping through to get everything, to get all of these alerts. And then it outputs all of those, which check it is. So the max RI, performance monitoring, script check for UAC, things like that. So what this allows you to do is just dump all of these alerts in one shot into an Excel or a CSV or text or whatever, and then be able to manipulate it however you see fit. The idea here is if you want to run that into a dashboard, you want to put it on TV, do something like that. This gives you that visibility very, very easily. So if you're not using it, it's totally fine. But hopefully this is opening your eyes to how easy it is to just reuse what we have created. Just put your address in your API and boom, use. Now you want to modify this, you're welcome to do so. Some of you I know for a fact have a lot of experience in this. Go for it, play with it, modify it, use it, whatever you want to do, it's yours. But this is just meant to give you guys the opening towards doing that. So what I'm going to do next is talk about doing the other side of this. Now, if I have an automation manager and I want to connect to an API, for example, Cisco Meraki, let's take a look at that. I had to do this last year for an initiative we had where we wanted to integrate with the Meraki stuff. It was built mostly for N-Central, but RMM has the same capabilities to use it. It's just a little tedious to use. So what we've done is through Automation Manager, we've made it where the API key shows up along with the org ID, so the Meraki organization. And then we have a variety of different scripts like that we've created. There's about 10 or 12 of them. Where it's going to connect to the Meraki APIs. You can see here, blah, blah, api.meraki.com, something, something. And then to your point earlier, Parish, this is using the invoke web request in this case. And then I am getting all this data, blah, blah, blah. And then as I'm outputting all of this, I'm capturing if the license is expiring. And then I can then put here thresholds to say the license expires on my Meraki devices in the next 30, 60, 90 days. Then give me a warning, do something, alert me so that I know, right? So you can connect to any API, whether it's Azure, AWS, Google Cloud, other platforms, whatever you want to do. Connect to their APIs, pull the data down, and then do something like I'm showing here. So if you have not done this before, that's totally fine, but you need to know at least you can. And that's really all that demo was intended. You don't need to look for this, just go into the cookbook. If you've never used the cookbook before, I'll put the link in the chat. Just give me 1 sec. There we go. And if you search for Meraki, here it is. This is made for N-Central, but like I said, you can use the automation policies and make that for RMM pretty easily. So you're welcome to go grab them if you want. But it's definitely something that you have the option to use if you want in the future.